Requests to ban books are at a 20-year high in the United States, and here in Massachusetts, several libraries and school districts have taken controversial titles off their shelves. All of these efforts are facing a lot of pushback from students, librarians, politicians, and avid readers across the country, including GBH News host Callie Crossley, who joins me now. Callie, thank you so much for being here. So we're seeing, I was provided this list of schools that have removed or restricted books in Massachusetts as of January 7th, 2024. They're all predominantly white schools: Abington, Ludlow, Marblehead, Medfield, Melrose, North Attleboro, Sandwich, Westwood, Wrentham, and Wilmington. And across the nation, we've seen librarians and teachers get fired for fighting back against these kind of bans. What's going on with this push? And it seems like there's a war right now about banned books, in not just in educational climates, but everywhere.
Well, I don't think there has been a big enough war until, maybe the last year, where there's been a lot of pushback against the bans or attempts to ban, which I celebrate. I'm a big reader, and librarians, both school librarians and public librarians, have been instrumental in my life in terms of expansion and just in general opening me up to other worlds. So the fact that somebody would ban some books that might have been instrumental in my growth, and I know how instrumental they will be to the growth of other young students, particularly because the fight is really about, it's for a lot of banned books across the board, including adult banned books, but the fight is really about the soul of young readers. And the effort being put into it, and the reason you mentioned that those districts were mostly white is because the targeted books are LGBTQ and or by authors of color, or content by LGBTQ authors and or by authors of color. I mean, that's been the focus.
And why? Why is that?
Well, because some people think the LGBTQ books are, quote, pornographic. The other part is that they think that the people of color who are writing are woke, for God's sake, and are have an agenda, when actually what they're writing about in both of those camps are lived experiences which have very much a connection to students. And I just want to speak about, for me, with those school librarians and those public librarians, knowing that I was a child of color that could have benefited and did benefit from having books that would celebrate me, even by authors that were not BIPOC. So one of my favorite stories when I was a kid was Pippi Longstocking. I mean, because she was totally different, and I felt different in a lot of instances. And what did that do for me? It was great. So to think that I wouldn't be able to read that, or some other kid who's a white kid couldn't read about experiences by kids of color or other people writing about that, well, not only is it anti-American, it's just disgusting and scary. And, you have to remember that when they come for you in these countries that want to shut down information, they start with the news business. We know that. And then the second step is at the libraries, because if you can shut off information or the expansion of anybody's ideas, there you go. So for me, I'm celebrating the RuPaul's of Drag Race, RuPaul's Drag Race, fame, for getting out there right now with a rainbow book bus. I'm celebrating the librarians who have sued and won. In cases where they've claimed to be discriminatory cases because of the choices they made for students in the libraries.
Talking about RuPaul's Rainbow Bus Tour, yes. RuPaul's also a partner in a publishing firm that supports these banned books, or supports books from authors of color and LGBTQ subjects, and just has been a huge proponent of this. Has said, this is education and knowledge is power. And I think what you're talking about in your experience as a kid too is that there is an agenda, right? I mean, that word agenda is used in it's just a sinister word, but it really is about supplying something to a kid where they feel seen when nothing else like that exists, when you feel so different, right? And then you read something and you feel validated by it. It though comes with an acceptance that there are kids on the LGBTQ spectrum. There are kids of color.
And those who aren't, who want to read about it, by the way.
Yes, right. It's not just for them, but it's so that everyone can create a kind of acceptance, and so maybe it's more about just a refusal of accepting those things. The RuPaul thing is interesting too, because drag queens and librarians, who have both been subject to censorship, have teamed up and joined forces on so many different platforms. This is a clip of a Lush's banned book drag queen story time with Cornbread Jeet. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but it's a drag queen who does a series on YouTube for kids where she'll just read kids' children's books.
What's up, everybody? It's me, Cornbread the Snack Jate, and this is Lush's Banned Book Storytime. In each episode, one of your favorite queens, that's me by the way, recommends a children's book that has been banned or challenged in the United States. This is in order to stand with the educators and the librarians that are fighting the good fight to keep essential stories on school and library shelves across the country.
So that's the Cornbread Jate episode of the series by Lush. But that's, fighting the good fight, right? There's been so much push about this.
Yeah, I just met Cindy Rowe, who's the president of the Jewish Alliance for Law and Social Action. And they're fighting on three fronts, local organization. First of all, they're fighting book bans by having a banned book club. Next book up discussion on Zoom is March the 27th. Then they're pushing for legislation that's sponsored by a couple of our local state house guys and women to make sure that we can ensure that there is not the kind of discrimination going on affecting librarians particularly. And then the third thing they're doing is setting up a project in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to create a private lending library, because there a lot of the books have been banned that we've discussed. And so those students will be able to have access to books that have thus far been banned from both public and school libraries. I mean, there are so many examples happening now, and we need all of them. The American Library Association has just set up an across the nation effort called Unite Against Book Bans. I mean, this is something that each of us can get involved in. 700 attempts to ban books all last year, and Massachusetts is fourth in the highest number of attempts to ban books. So we're not exempt, and we need to pay attention to it.
And all this is happening as well while we are anticipating in a few days, I think, the release of this documentary, Butterfly in the Sky, about LeVar Burton. And he has been consistently an advocate for reading and education, and also against banned books.
And they released it originally in 2022 for the Tribeca Film Festival. But this is the moment where they felt like the filmmakers, it's time to bring it out again, just to talk about the joy of reading. That was a whole point of Reading Rainbow. And I mean, that's you couldn't do it more. That we just had National Read Across America Day. Governor Maura Healey took part in that. There are all of these attempts to make sure that we are on top of it. And my thing is, parents, if you want your kid not to read a certain book, that's on you. Stop making it impossible for the rest of our kids to read it.
Yeah.
Keep it in your house.
Yeah, I think a lot of those kids will seek. If I was a kid, I would say, ooh, I want to read those banned books.
Well, the digital public library is making it possible for you to go online and you get free access if you're in a state where they ban
Good
books.
to know. Callie Crossley, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.